All right, welcome back to the Keiser Human Performance Podcast. I'm here with Sandro Freitas. Sandro, how are you, my friend?
Thank you. I'm good. And you, Gabe?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing great. So first things first, we have the Powerpenia Conference coming up in July in Lisbon, Portugal. Do you want to take a minute to talk about this event?
Yeah, this event where we will go in deep about Powerpenia concept, which is a very recent concept that was proposed in literature. In fact, just has 2 years. But right now is being spread worldwide. And because of the global interest on the concept, we decided to organize here a conference in Lisbon at the faculty where I work in a very beautiful time of the year because it will be summer with very nice good food and weather. So if people don't like the conference, at least they would like the country.
Maybe they can come to Lisbon and do some surfing at the very
Yeah,
least.
you can do surfing. You can do both activities in land and in the sea. So you have plenty of offer.
For someone who maybe has never been to Lisbon before, the go-to culinary experience, what food, what dish do they need to have if they're coming there?
They have plenty. Like, typical dishes, one of the typical dishes is made with codfish. And in Portugal, we don't capture directly codfish, so we import codfish. So we are specialized in importing and cooking the codfish because most of the codfish, they come from the north of the globe and Iceland, and then they send to here. And I think that we are the country that best makes codfish food.
What a fun fact. There you go. Well, maybe we'll have to have a separate episode on food in Portugal. But another fun fact, actually, one of the keynote speakers for this Powerpenia conference, Dr. Tanaka, was actually one of my professors when I was at grad school at University of Texas.
Oh, that's awesome. I never met
Yeah, so
him in person. I had opportunity to talk with him first time virtually in the first seminar that we did about Power Opinion when we launched the concept, which was 2 years ago in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're going to have some smart people there. So if anyone is available in the summertime, you want to go out to Portugal, have a nice time, learn a little bit, take part in a great conference, make sure you check that out. We'll drop a link to the conference in the episode notes.
Yes, by the way, in fact, we have limit places for people to watch here at the conference. So unfortunately, we cannot attend all the people, but because of that, we decided to create virtual registration so people can assist globally from any spot of the world. They can just register and assist the event online and participate online. Also to submit abstracts and works online, which is a nice opportunity to give a contribution so we can better understand the Powerpenia concept.
Okay, great. So let's dive into it then. Let's dive into the discussion today, and that is Powerpenia. So to start, for someone listening today who maybe is unfamiliar with this term, why don't we just start with a simple definition of the term?
Yes. Powerpenia, the word itself, it's a neologism, which means that the prefix comes from Anglo-Saxonic, from the English, and the suffix comes from the Greek. So we have power, and power, everyone in the world understands what is power. Like you go, because we use very commonly power in different cultures. So they understand, although power can have different meanings, even in Portuguese. But globally, they know what is power. Not the power to act, the social power, which is also power, but the mechanical power. Penis means loss. Power penia is a concept which means age-related loss of mechanical power or motor power, but also disease and physical inactivity related loss of mechanical power.
Thank you for the simple definition. My understanding is in the last few years, right, with your team, this really became a central focus. So explain how this research project, how this research that was published in 2024 really came together.
Yeah, in fact, normally when people become aware of the problems, they try to start developing solutions for the problems. And back in 2020, more or less, I started making research on this topic and collaborating with the research groups. And more close to 2024, in fact, it was 2023 where the first time that I thought together with my colleagues on this idea on Powerpenia. The numbers at that time made me to think in a strategy and something to fight against for. Like when I born in 1984, there was more or less 5 billion people in the world. Nowadays, there is like, I think more, this number that you are showing is not updated. It's like 8.5 billion people. But in 2026, at least 10 billion people will exist. Oh, 2050, so there's an error. Like in 2050, there will be around more than 10 billion living. And when you look to the percentage of people age more than 60 years, it will increase a lot. So there will be very stress among the demographic dynamics and the infrastructures, and we have to have a target to fight against the unhealthy behaviors and the difficulty to get health. So that's why we decided to give a name for the marker that probably better represents life, like vitality, which we name it Powerpenia, because we have noted that with age you lose mass. In fact, when you're born, you have more or less, the day you're born, you have more or less 25% of muscle mass in your body, and you may increase during your lifespan until 40%. It depends if you train or not, but let's say 35 if you are a man or woman. But when you look to strength, you have strength ability. For instance, babies, they can grip their hand, do the palmar reflex, and they can support their own weight. So they have a lot of strength in their hands. But when you look to power, the power reserve is low when you're born. Like, because you cannot produce work at a faster rate, which means that when you're born, you have very low reserves. And then with your lifespan, you get your peak very early with of power. Later you get the peak of your strength, and then later you get the peak of your mass. But you start sooner to lose power, then you start losing strength, and then you start to losing mass. But in the end, the day that you die, you still have muscle mass in your body. You can still produce strength with rigor mortis, okay, but zero power. So power is a key marker of your health, especially when you are aging. And in fact, it means that the rate loss of power with chronological age is very high compared to strength and muscle mass. And we are living in days where we talk about sarcopenia. So it's a medical concept since 2016, but no one talks in medical community about powerpenia. So that's why we decided to give a name, because we wanted to target our enemy, let's say, like this.
So you brought up a ton of great stuff, and right, sarcopenia, dynapenia, muscle mass loss, strength loss, these are very familiar terms. Why do you think powerpenia up until 2024 was so overlooked or not appreciated to the full extent in which?
Let's look to the history. When did sarcopenia born? When there was sufficient evidence showing that muscle mass was relevant. When did dynapenia born? When there was sufficient research showing that strength is important. When did power born? When there was not enough, but already some minimal research, very convincing, showing that power is really a good marker of health and vitality, more than health, vitality. Because if you become unhappy, depressed, for instance, you lose power, you don't lose muscle mass. Depressed people, what they don't have is power. They have muscle mass, but depressed people, like you have Olympic medals that they have a lot of muscle mass and strength, and sometimes they don't have power. If you get acute disease, like you get I don't know how you call it in English. Now I forgot to say in English. But if you get a grip, like let's say in Portuguese, constipação, okay, you lose acutely power, but you don't lose mass. Power is very sensitive. Like, let's suppose you don't sleep like last night. You lose strength, you don't lose muscle mass, you lose power. Power is very sensitive marker of your vitality.
So let's dive into this phenomenon and understand it better, powerpenia, at the physiological level. What are the main drivers of power decline as we age?
Yeah, let me ask you, K.H.P.P, can you move for the slide? Yeah, before moving to the mechanisms, just to explain, because this is the main picture, this is the main technical model of powerpenia. It's the comparison between power, strength, and muscle mass, which are correlated to sarcopenia, dynapenia, powerpenia. Although sarcopenia nowadays, it is formally determined using strength and not muscle mass itself. So, which is a little bit confusing nowadays, even among the community, the medical community. So there are key features of this model. So we lose mass, but we lose with much faster rate, power, and with less compared to power strength. And the onset of decline occurs first for power, and the decline accelerates later at some points in life. And there is a curious fact that there is some tasks that people they stop doing during their lifespan of power. For instance, there are people living worldwide that they can walk, but they cannot jump anymore. So those people they gave the last jump in life at certain point in life, So they will not go back again. Maybe some of them, if they really do some training, they can recover their ability to jump, but some they will not. And else, and we have to take care of those people, because although they are not able to jump, which implies that probably their running will also be very difficult, they can walk, and we can train them to increase their quality of life and giving capacity to be included on society. So power we lose much faster than strength and mass. What is the physiological mechanism? We decided. I prepared some slides. If you could move further, I think a little bit more, just to show you a thing. Now, I think it's before. Yeah, it's a study that we did with very old people. No, it's not this. Go. Maybe yeah, this one. Okay, so what is this? This is data from a study which we did. I collaborate with a Brazilian group, which is led by Professor Roney in Brazil and Professor Caroline Pieta-Dias, that they quantified muscle mass with DEXA, they quantified strength of knee extension and flexors, and rate of force development during the knee extension. So rate of force development is not power, because you are quantifying force in isometric mode, and you have to have displacement to quantify power. Rate of force development is a very close parameter to power production. And they tested people with more than 90 years old. So the more old person was 104 years. So, and living with more than 19 years, it's very rare in the world, People die normally before that. And they tried to see what was the parameter that was associated with chronological age. Among those sample of individuals with more than 19 years, there was no association with muscle mass, no association with strength, but there was association with rate of force development. What does that mean? That means that you lose the ability to contract in a fast manner. And to contrast fast, it's very complex, because you need fundamentally neural variables that allow to input on the muscles a very high discharge rate of the motor units, but also coordination, intramuscular and intermuscular coordination, to make the muscle contract very quickly. So in the end, the soldiers, let's say, they, no matter how bad they are, you can still produce power. What you really need is a good general.
So if we just rewind for a second, I want to take a look at this graph here, and we start talking about powerpenia. You talked about power falling off before muscle mass, before strength. For the average person that maybe hasn't done a lot of training in their life, just the normal person, at what point do they start to see or experience a more significant decrease in power in their lifespan, right? In this graph here, we have the age, right, from right in this x-axis. When can we expect some more significant declines in power as we age?
Okay, I will present you in this manner. Most fastest guy running, Usain Bolt, he reached his world record when he was 22 years old. The strongest man, which I can not remember his name because which the snatch and the clean together, he lifted almost 500 kilograms. So he reached the all-time record when he was 28. Last year, Mr. Olympia, he had a lot of muscle, right? Like muscle, and he was 32. So the onset that you can be logical, like train and get your record in life occurs in this manner, Joe. Okay, first power, then strength, and then muscle mass.
Right.
Okay, so you can first train to power, then give up, go for competition of strength, and then give up, go for competition of Mr. Olympia. You can still. So the opportunity to increase your tank occurs very early in life. So you can reach your tank very early, And then what you have to do to keep your power up is to manage well. So, and then it's not just a matter of power training, and normal people just think on power training. If you go to slide 14, please, you can see like what is the model that I'm promoting right now together with my colleagues. So this is a very basic hypothetic model of motor power development and also conserving. Sometimes you don't need to train. You just have to sleep well. Sometimes you don't need to train. You just have to have good nutrition. And sometimes you just have to manage your stress, because no stress at all sometimes is not good. Okay, you have to have very low level of stress to increase your tonus, okay, your motivations, because when you don't have nothing to do, you get bored, so you get depressed, and that's not good to produce power. So, and I think the key is to give training according these values. I should train when I have good patterns of sleep, good patterns of nutrition, and good patterns of mental stress. So that's why I normally say be careful with the Powerpenia concept, because you should not train power every day. But that's not the key. It's always a multi-component, and some people may need more, and some people may need less. Although there is evidence that's showing that if you do supervised program and oriented program with a professional, you don't get hurt, but still the risk increases when you do power training, of course.
So we think really until your mid 20s to late 20s, that is your time up until that point to build up as much power reserve as you can.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah. Because let's say it's good to have a big tank, but also to have fuel. Okay.
Right.
So people may have a low tank, but they can have always fuel. So,
right.
And what is fuel? Fuel is a combination of training, sleep, nutrition, and mental stress.
Right. So really the goal would be to increase the tank as big as you can, though. But once you get the tank to that size, being able to fuel the tank as time goes on.
Yes, having a good reserve is good, I would not say to have the maximum reserve as you can. I think there is optimal level of reserve, because it's very challengeable to have very big reserve like Usain Bolt have, and to preserve that level of reserve, because if in your young age you have very big levels of power, the rate loss with chronological age will be much higher compared to other people. For instance, the women, they have less power than men, but they manage better than men, with life. Women live more than men.
Right. So if you have a larger tank, there is then a significant drop off, and you really need to view that within the context of your life and life habits to determine if that is a significant issue or not.
Yeah. So like, have a reserve, have a good tank, a lot of fuel. Sometimes fuel is more important than the tank.
All right. If we think about attenuating the loss of power over time, what are the key ingredients that somebody needs to consider in order to put themselves in the best position possible to not lose power as they age, or to help slow down the rate of loss?
As I said, like, basing with this model, like, this is a model of conserving and developing, or developing and conserving motor power, So I have to rewrite there on the topic, because I will write a manuscript to help people to understand, at least share my view, how people can conserve better their power with life. As I said, it's not just a matter of training. Sometimes people should not train and sleep, okay? Because when we train, we have to have motivation. We have to have the risk of injury has to be low, and people have to have the wish of training, This is motivation, right? Yeah, because if you don't have, it's not, you can have a personal trainer pushing him, like, say, okay, let's do as fast as you can, but in the end he is not giving the best help. So there are certain conditions so people can make power training, which helps two things: increase the tank and also put the fuel inside. For instance, if you just eat and you train, you will put much more fuel inside in your body cells, okay, than just eating. So that's why fuel is not just a matter of nutrition. The training is a trigger to increase fuel to your body cells. So, and you have a lot of issues and methodological considerations. For instance, like the focus. When you are training, if you are thinking your body, so having internal focus in your body is not the best approach. You must have external, focus, because in that way you will be faster. methodological aspects like these may potentiate your gains.
Awesome. Let's pivot here to assessing power, okay? And maybe the best ways to go about assessing power. How should practitioners be thinking about assessing powerpenia, assessing power in a practical setting today?
Okay, nowadays there is a common test which is sit to stand that normal people apply to old people. Sometimes young people, they are already old, okay? People with 50 years, they are already old. But this test has some limitations, and a particular limitation of this test is twofold. First, there is a ceiling effect when you do the sit to stand, and you have a lot of variation. 5 seconds sits to stand, or 30 seconds, or 60 seconds. And depending on your life stage, sometimes one test is better than another. And I can give recommendations about that. But moving forward, this test has another limitation, which is this is a submaximal test. So a submaximal task, you do not approach the limits of power, and that's why and in the end, the test itself, it's a performance test. It's not a power test because we don't quantify velocity and force directly. So we infer from the performance. So these three main limitations put us like still a good approach because this test has relation depending on your physical condition and your chronological age. It has some meaning, like to recommend people, okay, you're good, you're not good, to say. But if you want to be more specific, and especially if you are with more physical capacity, and also more than physical capacity, if you're younger, you can modify the test. For instance, you can easily just test the jump. This lady, which is my mom, okay. um, so that's a business.
Look at her go.
Yeah, look. So she was at this time that we did this video. She was 72. She's now 75, and it was interesting because at that time she was diagnosed with cancer, and I said, Mom, now you will pay me attention, or you train or you die. So choose, okay, or you lose your son because I will get mad. And now she started making training and she got very success because she was doing the training together with the treatment, hormonal and chemical therapy treatment, and the tumors, they disappear, which were on their immunitary system, so lymphatic system. And in fact, but talking about this test, like here she's giving her best, and I can put encoder and I can quantify velocity, which is not power, but okay, it's a good driver of power, and I can see how good she is. And this test, for instance, is better than the other one. If people are not able to do the sit to jump test, they can move back and they can just do the sit to stand. Now it's a suitable, there is no ceiling limit, and probably people performance is approaching more or less their maximal limits, physiological limits. But for instance, let's suppose you want to make, because right now I'm working with other colleagues, we have a big network, and we are trying to find solutions for large scale solutions. And one approach was developed by my friend in Chile, Carlos Montesinos Cruz, that was just saying, okay, let's see how many people can jump or not in the world, And if you move forward one slide,
yeah,
I can show very nice data. So he just quantified, he did a binary test about the ability to jump unilaterally on the non-dominant limb for 3 times, like 3 consecutive jumps. And he noted in a Chilean sample that starting more or less at their 50s, people start losing the ability to jump on one leg. Like, for instance, when you reach 75, just half of the sample is able to jump. And when you just compare, what is the difference between people are able to jump and not able to jump? So Carlos is now proposing that every doctor should ask their patients, are you able to jump? Okay. And what he found, I can show the data on the next slide, that people that were not able to jump, they had, like, with last 60 years, they have less strength, less knee extensor strength, less power with sit to stand. And when we look to people that was older than 60 years, like you can go move the slide, the same. So every time you are not able to jump, overall your physical fitness is already bad. So you have a very simple test just to identify people that really need help, okay? Because otherwise, theoretically, they will die sooner, and they will have until there less quality of life. So there's a plenty of approaches, and of course you can use gold standard equipment like Keiser, because Keiser is, I must say, I don't have a Keiser equipment until now, but Keiser, it's probably the brand that most promotes power by their equipment. So, and the equipment has very good quality, and that's why very renowned brands like and clubs like Barcelona, like Palmeiras, worldwide, they have their equipment because it's good. If they are buying, it's because it's good.
Okay, so it looks like you have a number of assessments, right? And that is a very simple question, right? Can you jump? Can you land? And then from there, you have your sit to stand, which you mentioned. You also mentioned, a progression of that would be sit to jump. So, I'm curious to know more about the other progressions that you have and what would be appropriate for different ages. Can you expand on the different assessments that are available for people for better understanding Powerpenia or power?
Yeah, this is complex because when you have a lot of tests and their progressions and regressions, so it depends of the type. So we are talking about champions, but there are humans that don't have legs, and we have to have solutions for them. Another issue about the testing is to have a large scale and feasible approach. Right now, myself and my colleagues, my network, we have been working since from a while on to identifying a large scale solution to assess Powerpenia. And I will present that on the conference. So I have a solution, a proposal. It's like a nut.
Reserve your seat and tune in online, and you can find
Yeah,
out.
I can let you say like this. People will like the solution.
So as we look at Powerpenia and power on a grander scale, what are some of maybe the mistakes or misconceptions when training power in aging populations?
One of the concerns is like the safety. We have published like years ago with some colleagues, my colleagues. I was not the first author. This was an invitation from a Brazilian group led by Professor René, which we wrote and a letter to sports medicine showing evidence that it is safe, because when we search the studies that have examined power training and they did some training with individuals, the incidence, or at least the reporting of adverse consequence, was really very, very low. Which means that when you do supervised exercise, you can put this sentence in your head: power training is safe when supervised and done with the professionals. Of course, if you don't know to do the exercise and you just do it, you go fast and you don't warm up and a lot of stuff, you can get hurt, of course. But I think the first message to pass all over the communities, if you are with trained professionals, power training is safe.
And how do you think as an industry we start shifting more towards a Powerpenia-centric, a power-centric focus over strength for a large-scale population? Right? I'm not talking about specific athletes or people who specifically need just strength, but just in general. What do you think will help us value that more as a community in performance?
Okay, three main drivers. Not the only, but three main drivers. First, political. They must understand what is the real impact of exercise overall on health of humans, because when they understand, they will spend less money on disease if people are really doing exercise. Probably they will pay attention. The second is the medical community. The last consensus on sarcopenia, the consensus which was mainly composed by medical doctors, they excluded power from the concept. So they don't understand the the power of power. Let's say the power of power, like how much power it is and the meaning of this variable. And the third is the media. We have to put this on the newspapers, and journalists have to talk about this because they are also not aware. Like I gave 2 weeks ago an interview, and which will come on the news on the next week to talk about powerpenia, sarcopenia, and that stuff. And I think more interviews like this have to be on the TV. Nowadays, we see things on the TV that do not have so much value, and I think this has value. So we have to put very strategically on media.
Yeah, people talk about not wanting to lose their balance as they age. They talk about wanting to avoid falls. I think you even see things on TV and advertising to help people avoid that. And so much of it is tied to strength, right? This idea of I have to keep my strength or my muscle mass. But, I would say very rarely do I hear people say, well, I have to keep up my power, right? I have to keep my power reserve. So it's interesting because I think certainly out in the community, that is what we hear is we have to keep strength, strength, strength. And none of us are saying that strength isn't an important factor and muscle mass is not an important factor. Those are obviously very important things, but we've yet to have this shift into valuing power, right?
Yeah. Making analogies so can people understand. Let's say like this: if I have just very slow soldiers, I cannot win the war. If I have slow soldiers but strong with a good general, I have some chance of winning the war. If I have a good general with very fast soldiers, I can win the war.
Yeah, simple way to think about that. I like it. So in thinking about now all of the research that you've seen, all of the time you've put into this, any just general recommendations? I know you said it's got to be safe, right? Is there a recommendation about how somebody should approach training for power?
Yeah, it's like, I would say like this: sleep well, eat well, have small level of stress, and don't forget to train.
So what you're saying is these lifestyle behavioral factors have a ton of value in this entire equation.
Yeah, because I can say like the feet are very important, but if I don't have hips, I don't have feet. So, like it's always a multi-component. But because power, let's say, as I said before, you can have good levels of power, you can have full in your tank if you sleep well. If you don't sleep and if you train very well, you don't get full. So it's all a good component. And let's now promoting Keiser. I'm being invited. I can promote Keiser. Keiser helps you to know the level of fuel you have in your tank and the size of your tank. That says. So people have to know their numbers. They cannot know the numbers, let's say, but they have they have a conscience of their body, how it is, and how to manage. The four cornerstones are always these: sleep, eat, stress, and train.
Has your group developed any recommendations or leaned into anything related to upper body power, right? Someone who maybe has a limitation of the lower limbs. What tests have you been looking at from an upper body perspective to maybe give somebody indication of power or powerpenia?
Yeah, very simple. You can make, in fact, a very recent research made from a Brazilian group, which was led by Claudio Gil Araújo, has shown that the upper body pull, had a much stronger correlation, association with death. Okay, so it was a longitudinal study than strength, the strength of your hands, and your body mass. So let's say, if you upper body is a particular region of your body compared to lower limb, in which you have much more motor units of bigger motor units, which means that probably biological, the region that you will lose more biological power because you can mask that with training is your upper body. Okay, but we don't know. In fact, we had published a paper in British Journal to call for attention for this, because there is not so much research showing that that which is the body region, not to detect which is the region which has more meaning, functional meaning, but has more biological meaning regarding power levels. And maybe it could be the upper limb, because master athletes who don't stop training, they eat well, they sleep well, they have good levels of stress, not too much, not too low, they lose more power in the upper body tasks than the lower body tasks. So maybe, depending of your physical activity or lifestyle pattern, the region could be different. If you could go for the last slide, the 19, I think, yeah, the 19, this is what happens, when you are healthy, when you get to good lifestyle, you train, you eat, you are on the top, and you will lose with age, of course, but you can still be on the top. Let's look to Cristiano, okay? Portuguese footballer. He takes care of himself. He sleeps well, he eats well, and probably he doesn't train so much like others, okay? Because he has to manage, okay? And he's on the top. His tank has decreased a little bit, not too much, but decreased a little bit, but not too much again. Probably he is the footballer, the most older footballer with the last powerpenia, because powerpenia is athletic concept. And but if you are not healthy, you are unhealthy, you don't eat well, but without disease, at least diagnosed, and you don't feel it in your body, you will decrease with age your skeletal muscle and motor function with faster rate. And if you are with disease, you accelerate. And the difference between unhealthy and a disease pattern, lifestyle, let's say, it's very close, in fact, because the probability you get a disease is much higher. So the secret is always the same: sleep well, eat well, good levels of stress, not too much, not too less, but also the type, and don't forget to train.
And I think the goal here, right, would be to have this with age stay as high as possible, right? Have this bar stay up as high as possible and then fall off like a cliff.
Yeah. So other people can suffer from our death, not us. The people they died, you know.
Right. Right. Have you started to take any of this research and start to look at disease populations, or has this mainly been a focus on healthy populations?
Yeah. We are starting right now in Portugal a very big project. Let's translate. The project calls Vida Bella. Let's say like life is beautiful. A project, you know. And we are starting doing some programs with the community to get, and we'll also get the data. Our focus is to provide their low levels of powerpenia, so decrease powerpenia as most as possible, and we'll also get some data to analyze, and we may publish or not, because in Portugal we have good food, so easy to eat. Sometimes the stress is also okay if you manage okay. The sleep, yeah, you have to choose. You don't do the work and you go to sleep, but not training too much, okay? Yet. So our job is to put them to train because the rest they are doing already. And in fact, Portugal has a longevity still considerable. So the Portuguese people in general, they live more than, for instance, Americans.
I was going to say you should come bring that research over to America.
Yeah, waiting for the invitation.
Cool. I mean, it's very fascinating. Is there anything that we have not discussed about Powerpenia or about anything that you would like to hit on?
Everything we did not discuss. That's what we were organizing this conference to discuss more. And we are calling all the researchers worldwide to participate. And now they have no excuses because they can either participate in local, they can join the codfish, the sea, the surf, and all that good stuff, and just have a good contribution for the conference, but they can also participate virtually. They can submit their abstract will be indexed by Frontiers in Aging, which quartile one journal, so very nice journal, and give a contribution for discussion and to find solutions for the world needs.
It's fantastic that this event is being put on, and I'm sure with every single year this will continue to grow and grow and grow and really be an impactful event for the world.
This event, which people can watch on powerpenia.com, is being sponsored by Keiser, and we really thank to Keiser. It has given a good help to organize, but what we need is registrations from people here to participate, because the benefit of the event comes from people that are here and they give their contribution. If they give the contribution, everyone will love. Probably will bring the most powerful man living in Earth. He lives in Portugal, and we will test his power levels with the Keiser equipment. He's 54 years, and for his age, I have no doubt that he's the most powerful man in Earth. His origin is from Cape Verde, which has people living until 120 years, which is very nice, locally in the world. The women, not the men, because the men, they just take risky behavior, so they don't live too long. They drink, they do a lot bad stuff, let's say, so they die sooner. But the women, no. The women, they are smart. They live longer. They live 110, 115. Yeah.
They're way smarter.
Yeah, men are dumb. Yeah, I have no doubts. Like we did a study on football here. We study all the football teams in Portugal together with the Football Federation, and I found a very interesting thing. Like we asked to the people in charge of the recovery after the games, what was the recovery method that they gave most valuable, they consider more important, and what was the method that they classify as important, like what you use more, what is more important, let's say like this. We did analysis for women teams and men teams. Men, they say the most important thing to recover is to sleep. Okay, what you do more? I eat. So there was no correlation what the men say that was important and what they do. The women, the correlation was almost 0.97. So it was a line. Men say it's important to sleep, I sleep. Second thing is important to eat, I eat. So they do this in this progression, and they are right. So women are much clever than men, and the future is for women, of course.
Okay, any other resources, social media, websites that you want to share? I'm happy to put this in the notes, but maybe for someone listening right now who
Yeah,
doesn't have the time.
I think like right now the conference we are on the second edition, powerpenia.com, but we will advance sooner with more information on the website because people can stay connected through that website. We will keep the website just to put the information there. So all the news, good and the bad news, we'll put there. And the next good news, it's the conference 2 and 3 of July 2026, either in local or online.
Okay, Sandro, thank you so much. If I can recap all of this, eat well, sleep well, don't be stressed. And if you can train a little bit on top of that.
No, you should have stress a little bit, okay? Not
Just
too
a
much.
little bit.
Yeah, otherwise,
And
if you don't have stress, you get depressed, okay? No power.
And if you're going to have some codfish, go to Portugal and enjoy the cod there because it's the best in the world.
Yeah, to capture the best place is Newfoundland in Canada, in Charles, Newfoundland. You capture them, you bring on the plane, you take it to codfish it, we cook it for you, okay?
There's one takeaway about today's conversation. It's that. Sandro, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the Keiser Human Performance Podcast. We totally appreciate all the hard work that you and your colleagues have dedicated to Powerpenia and uncovering the importance of this. I'm really excited to see where this goes and how big this conference will get and really how the community begins to accept and really appreciate everything there is to know about Powerpenia. So thank you so much. I can't wait to talk again soon. Can't wait to hear how the conference goes. And for anyone listening again, conference, you can do it virtually. Notes will include the link to register. Make sure you do yourself a favor and do that. So Sandro, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And thank you, Keiser, for the opportunity. Also, thank you for helping in spreading the word.
Yes, absolutely. All right, my friend. Thank you. And we'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.